Hello, people. Welcome to our next episode of 4 NPCs Around the Globe. Today, our elf summoner, after all the failed attempts and experiences they've gathered, they feel that they need some more hand on ground experience. But they cannot leave the wormwood. They have experience and read about the main arts, all the classic arcane schools and ways of doing things. But there is more practical knowledge, uncommon knowledge out there. And there are beings beyond the veil that know about these uncommon, less practiced arts. So, again at night, they walk to the summoning circle and they try really hard to open a portal. It opens, and through it, a wee goblin with a ring light comes through. People, this is Samantha. She's a indie game designer, and what we're gonna talk about indie game design today. And I should have asked actually, like pronouns, is she okay? I might have
Yes,
overstep.
she's
Okay,
great.
okay, I'm glad I didn't overstep. Sorry, should have asked that.
No, you're good. Thanks for
Okay,
asking.
okay. Well, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you for
So
inviting me.
it was my pleasure. Okay, indie game design. Alrighty.
Yes.
So our first question for today is a fun one. What are the three most important aspects of game design? And which are your favorite games in each of these aspects for you?
This is a hard question. There's just there's so many aspects that go into game design. And trying to kind of pin it down to three things is really difficult. I think obviously, people know about the mechanics and the tone and the themes, and that's all incredibly important. One thing that I thought of when reading this question is actually the accessibility of the mechanics themselves. Something that I think people think about, but it's really good to think critically about the materials that are needed for your game, for example, because some games, um, a lot of games that just require a deck of cards or six-sided dice, a lot of people have those, right? Even if they haven't
Yeah,
bought like
yeah,
yes, exactly.
I have one
Um,
right here.
it's so it's a lot easier for people to pick up and play those games, because a lot of people have those, even if they're six-sided dice or ones that are just, pulled from a Yahtzee board, right? Something, even if you can just get them from different games that you have. But so that just makes it a lot easier for people to play those games. Other games, uh, if you need like a block tower, a tumbling block tower for games, I love a good tumbling block tower game, but it is a additional thing that a lot of people don't own. That if they're buying your game, they're also kind of committing to buying the extra materials.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think it's an important thing to consider when you are designing a game. Like, what else might somebody be expected to purchase or to find? Will they have access to these other materials that you need?
okay. Well, if I can add up to, some comment to that. Hmm. Speaking about materials and accessibility, yeah, that's true. And I guess historically, at the beginning of RPGs, a lot of people went for six-sided systems because it was harder to get, you know, polyhedral dice.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's okay. Yeah, I mean, you have a Yahtzee at your home. You have six-sided dice. Sure, let's go
Mhm.
with that because people are going to be able to get that. And it's easier to get one of these dice, at least in North America, and I guess a mid-advanced country, let's call it that. But now a lot of systems are going for six-sided dice, not only mechanically because you actually get like more like balance rolls throughout the
Hmm.
game if you roll like a dice pool. Um, but again, because of accessibility. Before it was because yeah, nobody's gonna buy the game because they won't be able to get the dice. Now it's because we want this game to really reach people. So I mean,
Yes.
practically it is the same, but like the reason behind it, it is not. And I mean, there are many cases with other issues we got in cut. For example, one of my favorite games, Changeling, actually have like I made a coaster just for that.
That's
First,
great.
yeah, first edition. Actually, you play with a specific set of cards.
Okay.
You have to get those cards just to use the magic. It
Hmm.
wasn't a normal set of cards. It was like specific for the game, beautiful and all that. But many stores didn't sell it. So come second editions, like we need to get this out.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I know people that because they didn't get dice, these polyhedral ones, when they started playing, what they did
Hmm.
is that they got these little box. They write down a bunch of little numbers in little pieces of
Oh, I
paper,
love that.
and they just like
That's
okay,
such a good idea.
yeah, and they're like okay, you know what? Yeah, let me see. Oh, 20, nice. And they
Yeah.
had like I don't know, like 7 boxes, for these.
Hmm.
Well, maybe not the six, but like the D8, D4,
Yeah.
D12. It's like, you already wanted to play.
Yeah, that's a lot of little sheets to write on, but
Yeah.
that's great. I never thought about doing that. That's such a smart idea. There's now like fortunately there's like online dice rollers now, right? That to kind of if you don't own a set, you can go on to Google, but it doesn't really feel the same. It's not as tactile, which is really nice when you're playing a game. And then also like if you don't have access to internet, right? You're not going to be able to use an online dice roller. So yeah, I think also people can sometimes I think that sometimes people make the argument that, well, like a lot of people who play TTRPGs have polyhedral dice, but in reality, that's kind of based on the idea that they have played like D&D, right? Because like yes, a lot of D&D players are going to own polyhedral dice, but if you want your games to be accessible to people who haven't started with D&D, right? If you want it's an assumption that is not necessarily a good one to make. So
Yeah, absolutely. There are games for Darkness which uses a DDM system, so you need to get
mhm.
this other set of dice, which is you know only tens, and I believe Coyote and Crow uses D12, so it's a
Okay.
whole. I mean, if I think by the image of the dice set on the book,
Mhm.
I think it is a D12 system. I haven't really gotten to that yet. Seems interesting, but it's you need to get a bunch of D12s unless you
Yeah,
already
yeah.
own a bunch of dice. Uh,
I probably have enough, but I would definitely be like picking them all from different sets, you know?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's a bit of a tricky one to you really have to go and seek those out if you want to play, I think.
Yeah, I mean there are diceless systems, but also is
Oh,
getting
sure.
those really less known games to people. Like if
Mhm.
you say D&D, sure, yeah, people know D&D. But
Yeah.
if okay, yeah, I have these diceless system, Wonder Home. It's like, what is that?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, also, like, if you go and, if you're trying to get somebody to play a game and you say, "Oh, it requires polyhedral dice and a tumbling block tower and a stack of index cards and, like, you have to work off of this Google sheet," right? Somebody's much less likely to take you up on that and to, like, actually play that game if they're like, "I have to do so much prep in order to gather all these things together." It's a lot easier to just say, like, "Hey, do you have a deck of cards? Great, let's go." Um, it just kind of makes that transition smoother and it makes people more, I think, willing to play a new game.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I see that you have here mechanics and clarity of transparency.
Yes. So one of the other aspects that I really like about game design is trying to get the mechanics of the game to match the like tone and the story that you're going for with the game.
Mm-hmm.
Um because with a lot of mechanics, you can kind of throw in there what works, right? What functions to do kind of what you want it to do. Um, it's like an extra step to try to get the mechanics themselves to really feel like you are playing that character, to really put you in in the game. I think that Slayers does a really good job of this, because each class in that game has different mechanics so that you actually really feel like you are playing that class. So, for example, there's a class that is the tactician, and the tactician isn't really like much of a fighter, but they're able to kind of their focus is on kind of planning and strategizing. And so what you do with the tactician is whenever you get into a battle, you roll a pool of dice, and during that fight, you can swap those dice with any other dice rolls. So if your ally rolls a 1, you can say, "Actually, that's a 6 now." You can swap it. So it really feels like you're playing this character who is like trying to guide the group, right? Trying to strategize with the group, playing to their strengths. And I really like that about that game. I think it really kind of, rather than in something like D&D where pretty much every, like, yes, everybody has different like spells and different attacks and things, but ultimately you're rolling like a d20 for all of that, right? It doesn't really feel like each class is um it doesn't feel like the mechanics of each class really embody those classes.
Yeah, it
While
is.
in
It is. What is the word for that? Asymmetrical system rather than asymmetrical.
Yes, I love it. I think it's great. I wanna see more of them. I still need to explore kind of what some other ones are, but Slayers was the first one I came across, and I love how that game works. And then with, like, another one is, The Wretched by Chris Bessette, the solo game that, uses a tumbling block tower to play, and,
Hmm.
well, like I said before, not everybody has a block tower. It is a really neat mechanic for that game because the block tower represents the stability of your spaceship basically. And so as you're like gradually pulling blocks, it really ups the stakes. It really kind of makes it more suspenseful, and you can literally see as your spaceship is gradually falling apart as you are removing blocks from the tower. I just think that's such clever design.
Oh yeah, I was actually gonna like sneak in the question for asymmetrical games because
Oh,
that is
sure.
yeah no we kind of organically got there.
Mhm.
But yeah, I have been thinking of that. I mean, there is an asymmetry in board games, games like I guess Bast and Root are asymmetrical. Like you have these different characters and they use different rules.
Okay.
Um, but I don't really see that much in RPGs. Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
You have different spells in D&D, but overall it is the same system. Some expansions on third edition, which will be what is the name of that? Yeah, the no, it is not the quintessential. It is the there is a magic compendium with a bunch of other magical classes like star magic, chaos magic,
Okay.
uh, and those are somewhat more asymmetrical. If you put
Mhm.
them in next to a wizard, it's like, what is this guy doing? Like this is a whole different thing, right? But I don't really see that much in RPGs, like having really different classes or playbooks
Yeah.
doing that differently. And I guess yeah, that might add some difficulty. Once you play one class, you go to the next one, and it's like completely
Mhm.
different. But as you mentioned with that example with the tactician, it does, I guess, define the difference strengths between one and the other, and I guess it can heighten those talents rather than just
Yeah.
being like a small set of like different powers.
Yeah, I think it's something that is becoming gradually more popular in TTRPGs. But I still definitely would love to see more of it. I think that it's just really fun when you are playing a game and the mechanics themselves really put you in the scene, you know? It feels a lot more exciting playing a character are, uh when you can really kind of feel like you are your character in ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. Like one game that I think kind of does that, and again, I haven't really gone that deep, is
Mhm.
Aquelarre, which is a Spanish, I guess, historical fantasy game. It
Okay.
is in like historical, Spain, Middle Ages, but like all that superstition, all that magic, demons, and all that
Mhm.
people in the time believe in is real.
Gotcha.
So the thing with that game is that the magic system, which isn't like D&D, like, oh yeah, I want to do magic. Like, no, you have to go for the magic. You have to find the spell. You have to go and
Okay.
get all these things,
Mhm.
and keep it really like under the table because the Inquisition is gonna get you. You shouldn't be doing that. It's really based on your beliefs. So magic is kind of religious, dark magic, white magic. You make a character. You can either choose to play a Christian, a Jewish person, a Jewish, or a Muslim, because
Okay.
that those were the three main religions in Spain at the time. So the magic you're gonna get playing a Christian is more aligned to Christian beliefs,
Oh,
uh,
interesting.
and same with the Jewish character, or a Muslim character.
Yeah.
So you won't be able to cast, say, some magic related to Jinn if
Mhm.
you are a Christian because you don't believe in that.
Sure.
So
Huh. What is the name of that game again?
Aquelarre.
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, it is really it is a big crunchy game. The book is
Gotcha.
beautiful. Just as a note, and to everybody here that might want to check it, being historical, it does
Mhm.
have certain rulings on the things your character might be able to do depending on their social standing and even
Mhm.
gender. I mean, you can throw that out of the window if you want, but just so,
Sure, sure.
yeah, just so you know, like you're gonna
That's
find
good to
like,
know.
yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Cool.
that is something interesting that game has.
Yeah.
And that kind of gets add up to something we're gonna talk later on, which is like certain standards. Like Spanish people don't really care about that, but I don't see really North American people rolling with that. And it's
Sure.
odd that they translated to English. I was like, huh,
Hmm.
that's odd. Like when I saw it, I was like, I know this game has this thing. How are you gonna sell it? Because that
Okay. Yeah.
I can see some backlash from that
Interesting.
in this particular, like, I guess, scene. But yeah,
Sure. Well, do we wanna finish up this one question, or do we wanna skip
uh,
over that?
how can the average person explore other cultures in games while being respectful?
I think it's a really, I think it's an extremely important thing to consider while playing games. I think that exploring other cultures through games is actually a really like fascinating thing that can be extremely it can be really educating depending on how you go about it, right? It's really important to go about it in the most respectful way possible. um, I really enjoy when there's certain games that I've seen recently that have notes on how to play this game if you are not from this culture.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
we already mentioned Coyote and Crow. You mentioned it earlier. I'm really excited for that game. I have the PDF, but I haven't read through it yet because I'm waiting for like the physical book to read it. But I think it's such a great game. There's a so for anyone who doesn't know, it is a game that it's like a sci-fi fantasy setting, but it's basically set in the Americas if they were never colonized.
Yeah,
Um, so it's written by a group of um, Native American designers, a lot of artists as well. And it has a section in the game that is basically saying if you are not Native American, then this is what to consider when you play this game. Like this is how you should play this character. And these are the things that you should avoid doing. And I think just like making sure to take the time to really thoroughly read through those sections and really really take them to heart and even go back to them as you're playing if you need to kind of refresh, is really important. Also, Jin Sha, Blood and Banquet Hall, also has a section on that, because that game is all about Chinese Americans. Um, and so they have a section about how to play Chinese Americans if you're not Chinese American. And I think that's just important. That's important material to review before you pick up a game like that.
I agree with you. Like, and I come from a place where many people, and I already had this discussion before, are a little bit like reserved about this thing. It's
Mhm.
like, this is a game. I mean, if I want to play something, I want to play something.
Mm.
I mean, that's okay. I want to play a character that belongs to a minority. Like, I shouldn't like cut my, I guess, possibilities just by saying, okay, I have this set of like backgrounds. Like for example, myself, I am half Italian, Colombian, and within that, I have Portuguese, Spanish, Austrian. I was like, oh yeah, that's the only things I can play. No, but I mean,
Mhm.
I need to be respectful. If I am on an active class, and I have to play the part of somebody that suffered trauma, I want to do a good some good acting, right?
Yeah.
On that. It is the same with a role playing game. Like, yeah, it is a game. That doesn't mean I have to do bad interpretation. So
Yeah.
reading these things and knowing how to play one of these characters respectfully really important. And
Mhm.
that does come independently. So maybe my character is more reserved, it is more outgoing, a really like brawn, uh fighting focused character. But
Mhm.
that is completely beyond being respectful to the culture, because
Sure.
yeah, you're gonna have all those archetypes even within this culture
Mhm.
and games. So I think many people, at least on my background, on I guess South America and surely many other places, don't really see this connection. But it's the same thing with doing a good job. Yeah, it is a game, but you still need to do a good thing. Like say, um, a good example for this also would be alignments. Like you don't decide to play a chaotic good character, but you roll it as an evil character. Like
Mhm.
you're not playing a good chaotic good character. Like same thing with this. Like and it also helps you if you do a homebrew. That's one of the reasons why I actually bought the PDF of Coyote Crow.
Okay.
Because I just really want to have like a part of the world that is inspired on the Americas, North and South and all those cultures. Being
Yeah.
that being that this game, even being fantasy, has that work that has that respectful representation,
Mhm.
I can actually learn from this.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a lot of what it boils down to as well is like there are as you mentioned, like there are people who don't consider it important for whatever reason, right? And I think both of us don't really agree with that so much, but it's something that's like if you put when you are playing a game, if you are putting the effort into it in order to um do this representation as respectfully as possible, you are learning from it, right?
yeah,
Um, it can be a fantastic learning experience as you're playing, and especially if you go and you do your own research, right? If you want to play a character who is disabled, for example, then like it's good to not just jump into that. It's good to try to learn some information about that disability and read some essays or watch some videos by people with that disability, right? Try to learn what some of the stereotypes are so that you can work around
oh
them, right?
yeah. Don't remind me about that. I had these like 25 or something link Tumblr posts on like how
Yeah.
to do characters with
Okay.
disabilities and like that sort of things. Like a
Mhm.
quite a complete variety of
Yeah,
resources. I
yeah.
was like, I lost it. I was like, no,
Oh,
like
that's the
I don't know, like
worst.
yeah, I don't know, 5 years
Yeah.
ago was awful.
Oh,
I
wow.
still remember it.
Yeah. And that it's like that those resources are out there, it's just a matter of tracking them down. I also think there's a really big difference too between playing. a game with like your friends around a table, right? And playing a game for like a live stream or a show, right? There's like at least like I think that it's like if you're a white person and you're playing a person of color on like a streamed show, right? I think that's very different than when you're like sitting around a table with your friends just playing a game and trying to like learn through it, right? Um it's kind of a it's a topic that like a lot of people are talking about right now. I think it's really important that we have diverse players in our games, and that it just seems like playing a game for like a live stream isn't really the right place in order to kind of do that learning, if that
Yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense.
absolutely. I mean, there is the the things that I can say, and because of my background, and I you cannot say because of your background. There is also laughing with you and laughing about you, and
Mhm.
those sort of spaces. Uh, I have trust with somebody, I can make a joke and we can laugh about certain
Mhm.
stereotype because there might be some truth behind it. And it's like, yeah, it's funny, but it is within that context of trust that say I can make some joke about that with some friend uh, on their background, and I know that there is some truth behind some stereotype, and I just send them a video and it's like, yeah, it's true. But I cannot just pull that on random person in the street because
Yeah.
there is no trust there, and
Yeah.
I don't know them on their background, and I consider that offensive. So,
Mhm.
and I guess those things do play out there. Another thing on this specific subject about cultures that I have seen, and this might just be me being a little bit salty. Uh,
Please be salty.
I don't know if, especially like bigger companies, when they do these sort of like researches and designs, and
Mhm.
I guess minority populations, I don't know if maybe they don't do a proper thing because that is not their main, I guess, demographic. For example, I'm not gonna call out names, but I know by fact that there is this big gaming company that make this whole design for South American lore,
Mhm.
and I know for the fact that South American people, we don't like it. Like, it doesn't have the depth. I mean, it
Mhm.
is really shallow. I mean, there are stereotypes and some sub settings within those games are completely unplayable. Like, yeah, I mean, this is fine if I am playing like a character that lives on the States and just have
Mhm.
this like little adventure and come here like and come to South America for vacations. But if I want to play in this setting because this is my home country, that's not gonna cut it. I have to do a lot of
Yeah.
work to fix it.
Mhm.
Uh, so I don't know if maybe that's because I mean nobody's really gonna play there. These people they don't really buy the game, and we know
Mhm.
that people in these countries that actually are getting our games are not gonna go there. So let's not put in the work. I mean that might just be me salty, but that's something I do have seen with like bigger things. And on top of that, I guess the little cherry on the cake is that in South America, we have seen many people avoiding games set within their locations. So
Really?
you have people like, hey, I'm gonna run this whatever game of urban fantasy, and it's
Mhm.
set up in the country, it's set up in this city. So like, no, no, I don't want to play that. I don't play games like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I was gonna run a game that was set up in New York, you would play, sure.
Is it
Why?
because of like the is it because that so many games just don't do the setting properly that they've kind of like lost trust in that?
No, no. I don't know why people do that. I don't know if there is like a power fantasy or what, but
Yeah.
that's something really weird.
Hmm.
Because it's not like, hey, I'm gonna use this really badly designed setting. I am, making the model.
Okay.
So
Interesting. Yeah.
that's weird.
Hmm. I wonder why.
Yeah.
That's like I think that I know that we have like a little question on this later, but it is interesting hearing about like how different people what is it like important to people from different countries in their games, right? Like what people gravitate towards in different countries, and what they like the culture behind games in different areas of the world. It's like I'm really still learning a lot about it myself, but it's always really fascinating to hear more about it. Like I had no idea that that was the case. So it's I don't know. It makes you kind of I'm sure there are essays somewhere like about kind of the like all like the historical context of that, and I really need to read some of those because I think it'd be fascinating to learn more about.
Yeah, yeah, that's something really interesting. So,
Mhm.
following to what is question three, we know that on the early 2000s and up to like the 2010s, there was this boom in game design, especially board game design, and yeah, that came in from Catan and everything that came after, because people really needed to connect, and that face to face versus just video games, everybody just parallel to one another, just in front of a screen. Now we have the pandemic. We're doing things online, and people are really not seeing one another. So, what do you think? What's gonna happen when the pandemic is over, and we can go back to those like analog face-to-face connections and experiences with games? Are we gonna see a boom again? Another spring of RPGs, or what do you think of that possibility?
Sure. Yeah, I think that it wouldn't surprise me if we saw another boom. Like I mean, I know I really miss playing games around a table.
Oh
I
yeah.
miss it a lot. I play games online like a couple nights a week, and it's just and like it's fantastic. I have like a couple of just really wonderful groups. But it's not quite the same, right? Um, and I think that once it's safe again to I think that some people are gonna have games that they've been wanting to play for like 3 years, right? That they can finally pull off of their shelves. Um,
Yes.
so it would not surprise me if there's another boom of it. But I also think that a lot of the kind of digital assets that have been created for games over the past couple of years during the pandemic, and a lot of the online gaming that is happening, I think it's actually going to continue at a pretty steady pace. Just because like we're so much more global now, right? Like it's a lot easier now to play games with people from around the world than it was just like 20 years ago, right? And so having games that are good to be played virtually and that are designed specifically to be played virtually is really beneficial for people, and it really like opens those doors to playing with friends from all around the world. So I actually I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. I think that that's going to stay pretty consistent. Um, I've I know that like some games too have because of the pandemic have does like there have been digital versions of them, um, and more digital tools that might not have existed without the if the pandemic didn't happen, because it wouldn't have been like as necessary at the time, right? um, but so many game designers have adjusted and have made games that are specifically for virtual play because we know that we can't really play around a table anymore. So yeah, so I think I would expect there to be another boom, but I don't think that will be at the detriment of online play.
Hmm. Well, I actually agree with you. Now that I think about it, at the beginning, I guess maybe a year ago, in the pandemic, I read about this thing regarding like trauma response. Like we humans are
Mhm,
really good at adapting once we like suffer trauma, but going out of that adaptation, back to a state of normalcy,
mhm.
now that's harder. Like that's why you see, say, soldiers, they adapt to war fairly easy, but coming back into society is really hard for them.
Yeah.
And I know, for example, in the States where you are, there are some issues about that. And there is some trauma and social response, and disconnection coming in the pandemic.
Mhm.
If some of that does relate to games and how we play them, and I'm not saying that is the case, and I can see live games maybe having some issue about that, and that I guess might be a reason why virtual games are going to stay, especially
Mhm.
in some populations. Other people that might not have that response will totally gravitate toward physical games.
Sure.
But yeah, I may see an actual boom between people really yearning for that face-to-face connection again. What really interests me about these changes that might be coming as an industrial designer, um, is the digital transformation. Say, for example, in work environments, a lot of companies actually fully adapt to the digital tools because they needed to when
Sure.
the pandemic hit, and many people adapted playing games using all these digital tools. So now that we know them better, we are more comfy around them rather than just
Mm.
going analog with dice, because that is the, I guess, the purest way of playing. I am interested in seeing if we can get more fusion technologies and tools are going to
Yeah.
show up. There are many, for example, what is the name for that? Um, oh shoot, it's completely slipped my mind. I have it somewhere around here. Augmented
Sure.
reality. Augmented reality.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are some people that have delved into that.
Mhm.
Tabletop AR and some other tools that might have some like digital minis you would see through your phone, like
Yeah.
moving and all that. I don't really see them popping up real often like
Mhm.
IRL games. I don't know if they are fully ingrained with these digital tools that we might use when a game is cancelled are going to translate into physical games once we start playing again. So
Yeah.
I do see a possibility of really kickstarting those tools, uh, because of that like acceptance that we got from the pandemic.
Sure. I think that AR would be fascinating for games. Um, but it also kind of wow. I really think that there might be a pretty big future for games with AR for tabletop and AR to mix together. I also do think that it kind of falls back on that accessibility issue, right? Having I'm sure that games that implement AR technology are probably going to be a bit more expensive, right? It may be a little bit harder to get your hands on. But yeah, that is something I haven't really thought a whole lot about, but I think you bring up a really good point with it. I would not be surprised if we see a lot more of that implementation between, like, the physical tabletop and, um, digital tools and technologies, right? Kind of, like, mixing in together in gameplay. Because right now it's mostly I mean, there are games that combine it, but it's a lot of one or the other, right? You're at a table or you're online, right? So it would be interesting if when it's safe again to play around a table, if we keep kind of some of that, um, those, like, digital tools as we're playing.
Yeah, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe machine learning PVG.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, like you have this tool that is also learning based on what your
Yeah,
characters
yeah.
do, and you have this thing that helps you really ingrain a really, I guess, complex planning scheming
That just
BVG.
blew my mind.
Yeah, I just thought about it, like that somebody needs to
Wow.
make, somebody
That
needs
would
to
be
start doing that.
a terrifying villain.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Yeah, no, I
wow.
have this little software in my computer that is learning based on your shit and some
Yeah.
Reddit posts on the side. So I just get all these prompts and plans that are more evil than what I can think about, and I'm just running them on my game.
That's excellent. Oh, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, yeah,
That would be wild. I that would be so hard, but like to make, but if you could pull it off, that would be really interesting.
yeah. Any programmers watching this? You know,
Oh, wow. I love that. Wow. I'm really excited to see what will happen in the next, like, 10 years of games. I think it will be, uh, I don't know. I think it's exciting. I think we'll see quite a big boom. But one of the other things too is that, especially with the pandemic, is solo games, right? Single player games
Yeah,
have become really popular in the last few years. I mean, to be honest, I have not been like I haven't been in the like indie scene with games for that long. I really only kind of delved into them about a year and a half ago. So like by the time that I was actually um like learning about indie games and playing them and talking about them, solo games had already become more popular, but from my understanding that wasn't always the case. And that there's kind of been a recent boom of them. But like there's so many people who don't know that they exist. I know that, like, you found me through my TikTok channel, um, and that, that a lot of people on there, whenever I mention a solo game, they're like, "I d like, they make solo TTRPGs?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man. They're great, they're fantastic." But that is something that there's been a lot of talk about whether those will kind of fade away after the pandemic is over, because like right now you're kind of all like it's hard to play games with other people, so being able to have a single player game kind of gives you a little bit of that. It gives you a little bit of the same kind of feeling of playing a game around a table, when you don't have to be around other people, right? And I think that discussion is really fascinating, but I truly think that they're going to stay around because there's something like really personal about them. Um, it will be interesting to see what happens once people are around a table more often, but I think they're here to stay.
yeah. The thing with like solo RPGs and indie RPGs, no, especially solos, is that it is a really easy way to get into things you like. Going into buying or looking for a four-person uh, or group RPG, you're gonna see really popular themes. Unless you go for an indie thing, you're gonna see what is popular, what people like.
Sure.
So you're gonna find, say, more of a dark dystopian sci-fi rather than solar punk, example, which isn't
Mm-hmm.
that popular, or fantasy and whatnot. But if I am really into folk horror, that's less, less easy to find. That's more of a niche. So
Yeah.
it is easier for me, if I really like this. Hey, there is this solo RPG, that is, I don't know, $10, and I can really enjoy something that is really niche to me, and I don't know anybody else like it.
Yeah.
So that is really easy for that, and that's an amazing entry point into indie RPGs, because if I have this really specific taste and there is this one game that does
Hmm.
that, I can really get into that. As a matter of fact, in one of our first videos, I think it was the second one, we were talking with this really important community organizer here in Canada.
Okay.
um, he mentioned about this little community of people that have the capacity of inviting game designers. It's like, hey, we really wanna we really wanna try a game about, I don't know, like, um helping monster girls, whatever, because they
Hmm.
have been hunted, and they are wounded, and we were a game about helping them and nurturing back into health.
Hmm.
And you design that for us. Like, we're gonna fly you over, and you make it, and
Wow.
you run it for us. Like, whoa, you have people that
Okay.
do that. Whoa, holy heck.
That's great. I fully agree with that. I think it's one of the reasons I like solo games so much is because they can be so personal to the player, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a group of players and you really trust each other and you're really close, right? Then it might not be so hard to like
Mhm.
explore certain themes or to like really kind of put yourself into like your character. But not you can't not everybody feels comfortable doing that with every group, right? And so a solo game not only lets you kind of find something that is super interesting to you and only you that like the rest of your group might not be so interested in, but it also lets you write or play or make like whatever you want out of it, right? So you can explore any themes that you want to explore without worrying about how other people might perceive that, right? Because it's just so it's really just you and the game. And you can write about whatever you can take it in any direction that you want without being influenced by other members of your group. And I think it can lead to some really amazing stories, and sometimes like moments of self-discovery, or kind of it can be kind of therapeutic sometimes, I found.
Thinking about that, you have a game that is all about remembering, right?
Sure, yeah.
Anamnesis.
Mhm.
And just to show like the complete opposite of that, that is a 1,000-year-old vampire. And it is not really,
Yes.
yeah, I get, yeah, Delight is not really gonna show it. This is a game
Mhm.
about forgetting. Um, just quick explanation. You're a vampire, you live eternally, potentially, but your body being human, or having been human, cannot withstand so many centuries of memories. So you forget things, and it's a game about forgetting who you are. Where your game, Anamnesis, is about having amnesia, right? And
Mhm.
remembering your past and who you are.
Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't know that, I actually I have a copy of Thousand Year Old Vampire now. I'm very excited about it, but I have not played it yet, and I have not read it yet, but I've heard amazing things. But I didn't realize that it was about forgetting. So that's I
Yeah,
am
yeah.
yeah.
You have like some set of memories that are on your mind, and
Okay.
once you feel those, you have a diary that has a different amount. Like you can like there are like two different like pools with
Mhm.
different maximum amounts. So you will start forgetting. And as a note, this thing really blew my mind here because I actually studied this little fucker in college. This is
Oh,
the
really?
yeah the Angelus Novus. This little
Okay.
drawing here.
Yeah.
This little thing. There is this whole explanation about the Angelus Novus being this like sort of being that watches into the past and eternity and experience everything all together and really forgets what advancement is.
Okay.
Uh, and I just saw that thing. I was like, whoa, whoa, that does matches this sort of eternal being that experience all of eternity
Mhm.
and really because they're seeing everything, they don't really comprehend
Interesting.
time and they forget things.
Mhm.
There is that intersectionality, and just in that little drawing, it's like, oh, these people did their work right.
That's great. That's exciting. I'm very excited to play that game.
Yeah, yeah, it is beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the cover itself is just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. So, we actually started mentioning your game. So why don't you tell us more about it?
Sure. So Anamnesis is a solo game. It uses a deck of tarot cards to play, and it is all about recovering your. It's kind of about recovering your memories. It's really about finding yourself and discovering yourself after experiencing amnesia. So, big trigger warnings for memory loss, because the game is pretty directly about that. Uh, but it is kind of an exploration of self-discovery and identity, as because like as you learn about your past through the game, you are coming to terms with it, and you are trying to figure out whether you are still that person or whether you're someone new.
That does set up. Like I actually had an ex that had amnesia, and
Oh, yeah?
yeah, yeah, at some point, and that part of that you just said like you're somebody new that really struck me
Mhm.
because after that accident, I didn't feel like she was the same person. Like she remembered things
Yeah.
eventually. I mean, it wasn't like a huge memory loss. She did forget me, but it didn't feel like the same person. So it,
Sure.
yeah, that's certain something that can happen. Like you're like somebody new that just recovered all these memories.
Mhm.
Yeah. So really
I feel
good.
like
Yeah,
that.
good work there.
Oh, thank you. You kinda think I don't have personal experience with amnesia, but I would imagine that losing kind of a chunk of your memories, like, memories are so integral to who we are as people. They really are a big part of our identities, and so to lose a section of that is like is really like losing a section of who you are, um, and I don't know how you would come out of that as the same person in the end, you know? So, It definitely kind of the game itself really explores that and explores like whether you like as you are learning things about your past, do you like regret those things or are you distant from them now? What is your relationship to the memories that you are gradually recovering?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as somebody that has that some experience with amnesia, I like to see it as like you have a like a new safe point. I
Mhm.
mean, it's not from the start of your life, but it's from this moment you actually start with you forgot. So it's like you're seeing the same, I guess, panorama, just from a
Mhm.
different point, like point in space. So everything looks different, but it is the same thing. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's an interesting comparison to make with it.
Question four: as far as expectations, in
Mhm.
basic mechanics, teams,
Yeah, yeah.
have you noticed any difference between different group of people or different
Mhm.
nationalities, how people play in different places, and how does that relate to game design and like teams and storytelling,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
how
I
can we make a bridge between all those different expectations and games?
Sure. I think that there are absolutely differences in like what people focus on in different parts of the world in their games. Um, I am not an expert on this subject. I am still learning a lot myself about it. But like kind of what you've talked about too with like very folklore heavy games in Europe, right? Um, and it's interesting seeing how it is so fascinating seeing what different people gravitate towards. Um, I think like as far as bridging the gap goes, I think it's just important to play games with people from all around the world. If you are able to, if you have the um, if you have solid enough internet that you can video chat or voice chat with people and um, play games with them, then I think it's a really great experience to play with people who are from different backgrounds than yours because that doing so kind of gives you more of an understanding of what people gravitate towards in their games. And then not only that, but just reading games that come from all over the world, right? I think it's really important to try to read games from a diverse set of designers so that you can learn more as you're reading. And I think that just in kind of absorbing that information, that does help bridge the gap. It just helps kind of widen your view on things.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, I have seen some things, and as you mentioned, based on the comment, I mean, we have on our side document where we have the questions. That's why
Yeah.
some some notes about like these little comments, um, based on conversations and like things I have read about like how games are in different places, and you can find some articles and like what is the most popular game in Europe, what is the most popular game in
Mhm.
Southeast Asia. I understand that there are differences based on like European games, both designed and really played in certain countries. There is certainly a difference. Aquelarre, which is a really popular game in Spain, I don't know if it is the most played game, and I know like the company that made it have gone bankrupt like 3 times.
Oh, wow.
No, yeah, but you know how it is. They come again and they make a new edition, and
Sure.
yeah, I mean, it is really on historical fantasy. Spanish people are really into their history and their language. For example, if
Mhm.
you see Spanish people using English words, you're gonna see that they pronounce them exactly in Spanish. They're not gonna say Wi-Fi. They're gonna say Wi-Fi,
Sure.
uh, and other words like that. Uh, why? Because they want to preserve the language. That is their logic. So there is a really value in the culture. So aquelarre is a thing, historical Spanish fantasy. I think there is this expansion book that really expand to Europe if you want to play in other countries. But there is that the Dark Eye which is a German fantasy game, has a lot of design based on culture, on
Okay.
Germanic culture. The system is really crunchy and complex. For example, for a skill check, you have to roll 3 skills. So there are three to achieve something. There are 3 specific skills um, related to a thing. For example, you're doing some foraging, you have to roll perception, you have
Mhm.
to roll search, and you have to roll survival, because you have to watch things, you have to look for things, and you have to know things on nature to make it work. So
Okay,
it is
yeah.
3 rolls just to get one result. It is more crunchy in that sense,
Mhm.
and that adds up to this really mechanical approach of German culture, and you can see some of that reflected in Euro board games as well, where, for example, Bessette and Tulpan Chronicle, which is based on Dragon of Demon and the, I guess, Scandinavian version of Dungeons and Dragons,
Mhm.
is really heavily focused on Scandinavian culture. Even the art reflects this. I forgot his name. This artist that was really popular on drawing fake creatures, trolls, and
Okay.
such.
Yeah.
Um, as a matter of fact, there is this, I guess, mockumentary movie called Trollgängaren, which also uses his art. The guy died at a young age, but you see that reflection of the value they have on the culture, even in
Mhm.
the art of the game, which is amazing. I know that Poland is really into Cthulhu, same as Japan. Like
Oh, I
it,
didn't know that Poland was really into that.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
interesting.
that is like their most popular game. Last time I checked,
Yeah.
Japan is also really into Cthulhu.
Mhm.
Uh, more than dungeons. For example, even the art of dungeons in Japan is pretty different. The rules are the same, but the art is more reflective of Lodoss War.
Really?
Yeah, from my
Huh.
understanding.
Okay.
And even beyond that, I think the main demographic for Cthulhu in Japan are women under 30s. Like it's not this.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah,
I knew it was
it's
more
not.
popular, but I didn't know that. That's so
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. That is like, huh? What?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really different from what you usually see. But yeah,
Sure, yeah.
for example, even I was on this small event. I managed to sneak in, during the pandemic. I
Mhm.
guess this mini con, and I had a Cthulhu sweater,
Sure.
and just buying some dice. There was this couple, Asian international students,
Mhm.
and they just approached me. I love your sweater. It's so hard to get people that play Cthulhu here.
Oh, wow,
I'm
yeah.
like, it adds up. It does add up. Like, so, I mean, that does raise the question, and something I want to check is,
Mhm.
being international myself here in Canada, what sort of difficulties international people moving to North America when they have like a different playset or play
Sure.
style experience.
Mhm.
I mean, that is not a thing for this video, but yeah,
Mhm.
I guess playing games designed by different people and really exploring these strong focus on cultures rather than just say, for example, following really classic fantasy and everything is all the same.
Yeah.
It does bridge the gap. I am willing to experience this more culturally depth game, and that is a new nice experience for me, but it's
Mhm.
also an entry point for somebody that has a different culture than mine, and they are more likely to play in this game, and that's a
Yeah.
way I can really connect with more people.
Mhm.
And
I fully agree with that. I think it's also I would also encourage people to like really try to GM some of those games too, because in doing so, like you're really absorbing more of the game in a way, right? Like you really have to give the book a very solid read. You have to have a good understanding of its themes and the mechanics. And and then you're also kind of creating that space for people to play. Um so I think that I think being a player in um games from around the world is awesome. I think GMing them gives just that additional depth to it.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, I don't know if, and also the kind of storytelling. I mean, I know that native storytelling, at least in novels and books, is not
Mhm.
linear. It's not that linear. This is something I learned from book talk. I wonder if Coyote Pro,
Mhm.
I don't know if I haven't really gotten them on the book yet, really ingrained that sort of storytelling within the RPG of not
Mm,
being linear and that complexity into the game system.
sure.
But if they do that or somebody managed to pull that off, because yeah, it is harder on an RPG than on a book. It really adds a certain depth to the game and that sort of like experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to, I'm so excited to read that game. I would be curious, how it handles that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think bridging those gaps is, not only important, but also just really interesting. I think I mean, I guess not everyone is going to have the same interests, right? But, I'm always just, like, fascinated to hear what people are playing from other places. I think it and just, like, learning about why that's the case, like, trying to understand that.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like there is a depth to these things,
Mhm.
and there is a passion that you really don't might not see on a big gaming company just for
Sure.
exploring something, and m- maybe an indie game designer will do something similar. But when you have a group of people, that is so many sets of hands putting
Mhm.
maybe an event, for example, putting something out.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, for example, we once did this World of Dragons event, and we planned it within the context of the country. So
Mhm.
all the games throughout like different centuries were based on the country history. So
Okay.
and we really ingrained all the stories together. So
That's really cool.
yeah. So the guys that were playing on the colonial time, I
Mhm.
mean, they were like their characters were NPCs for the guys that were playing in 1998,
Oh, wow.
and this other game, happened on this really important war,
Yeah.
and it was like,
That is such an awesome idea. I would wow, I have to I might have to do something like that sometime. That sounds really cool.
yeah, like okay, on the states are you? If it is like the what, East Coast, right?
Yes, I'm on the East Coast.
So I don't know, like you well, I don't know the system, but if you can find like certain specific really important events on your area,
Sure.
and you're like, hey, I mean, I need like 70 ends for these things, and we're
Mhm.
gonna like these are the things we have to run games on, and you're like, ooh, that's was a really important thing,
Yeah.
that whatever fight or like war, war or whatever. Ooh,
Mhm.
and you invite all that together. That's quite interesting, even for learning experiences. Maybe
Sure.
for kids, it's like, hey, you want to play? You are learning about the Civil War. You want to play a role playing
Mhm.
game in the Civil War?
I saw I cannot remember the name of it now. I did see there's a game recently that was released about the Civil War, and it looks so interesting. I will have to, like, email it to you later or something because I can't remember the name of it. But, like, those games are out there, right? There are so many games about historical events, and I think that's like, what a unique thing to explore through a game,
Yeah, I
right?
mean,
Like
there is this like the Night Witches one, which is a PBTA,
yeah. Mhm.
and
I'm not super
that's,
familiar with that one.
I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, the potential is crazy. Like I designed this specific little module based on
Mhm.
the Hatfield and McCoys for D&D. So there is this whole feud, but like the players don't
Yeah.
know it is actually just like a D&D skinning of the Hatfield and McCoys. You're
Interesting.
like,
Okay.
what? Why is this happening? Like these people are crazy. You're like, haha, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Hatfield and McCoys. So I mean, there is a lot of potential there, like even
Yeah, I
for
think so. I mean, this is kind of a pretty basic question, but I would be curious to just hear like is there a game that you're playing right now that you're just like really enjoying? Because I'm still, I feel like I'm still constantly learning about new games from all over the place, and so I would be curious to hear like what you're playing right now or like what one of your all time favorites is.
well, honestly, I actually got Thousand Year Vampire because I am not playing anything right now. Everything is on hold.
Gotcha. Yeah.
COVID. But one of my favorite games, I mean, it is Changeling. I really, and again, I really like fairies,
Yeah.
and the whole concept of the game of, like, banality and glamour and being this being that is dying because people don't believe in you and trying
Oh
to
wow. Okay. Yeah.
ingrain magic and that sense of wonder into people.
Hmm.
It's really dark. I mean, the game is really, like, I guess, colorful and happy in the sense that it is the closest thing to D&D within World of
Hmm.
Darkness. But the thing is that your freaking enemy is not like this primordial evil.
Hmm.
It's humanity,
Oh wow.
hate for magic, and just like that sort of like death of inspiration that comes with, I
Hmm.
don't know, office jobs
Hmm.
and corporate cultures. Like, how do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
fight that? Like, it is so dark. And I mean, I do have a really vast list of games I want to play. There is this game like called 50/50, which is inspired of one of my favorite animes of all time,
Okay.
Ramanibu no Ichi. It's quite an interesting find. I mean, I have Bessette, and I bought it last year, a little bit
Hmm.
over a year ago. Haven't been able to play it.
Gotcha.
Um, but yeah, there is a bunch of games I want to run. Wonder
I'm gonna write
Home,
this down. Oh,
yeah,
yeah. I I haven't played Wonder Home yet. I'm like, I really need to get on that. It sounds amazing.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, but yeah, I mean, there are quite a few games I want to play and run.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm sorry I cannot really fully answer the question,
Oh
but
no, that was great.
these situations, the conditions right now are not the best to
Yeah.
meet those requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm absolutely gonna look up Changeling. I have never read it, so that sounds really fun. That sounds like such a cool idea for a game.
Yeah, there are two games. There is the first one, which is a little more dreamy. The second
Okay.
version, that is the Lost, is more aligned to the actual changeling that you are stolen by fake creatures, and is
Okay.
more inspired on trauma. Like, it expresses that better.
Mhm.
So if you see a color one, the
Interesting.
colorful one, that's the one I play. The green one, like the green schema one, that is the
Okay.
that is the trauma one, which is changeling the
Gotcha.
Lost.
Good to know. All right.
All
Cool.
right.
Thank you.
After having a long, really meaningful conversation with the goblin with the ring light, our novice of summoner started to understand all these little magic tricks and little arts that might boost their summoning and understanding of the veil, how to really piece through different realms and pocket dimensions better. And with that, the goblin turn away, and with their ring light just pop into the portal, and so it closes. An hour of summoner stands alone in the circle with knowledge by their side. Again, thank you, Sam, for joining me today. It
Thank you for
was
having
an
me. This
amazing
was
chat, and
fantastic conversation.
thank you people for being with us for a little bit over an hour. I hope you enjoy the video and you learn as much and if not more than I did today. If there is any sort of theme or guest you might want us to try and get into this small channel, please, comment below. We'll do our best, and we will see each other soon. Thank you and bye bye.